Hi guys, and welcome back to Switch Up. Glenn and I are delighted to be around about 1,000 subs away from 40,000, which is incredible, and we can't thank you enough. Thanks to the developer for the review copy of Streets of Rogue. It's a strange thing when you know a game is better than it initially feels, but one I'm not entirely unfamiliar with. For those who have played The Binding of Isaac, you'll know what I mean. It takes a while to get that particular game's flow. Streets of Rogue isn't exactly like that game in terms of gameplay, more akin to maybe GTA meets Gungeon, with a sprinkling of just about every other genre you can think of. Is it a jack of all, master of none, or a genuinely new and enjoyable experience? Let's find out.
They're home to pieces? You're a monster. But that's cool. The game doesn't have a morality stat.
There is a rather vague and nonchalant story involving some very bad people and the eventual currency being turned into chicken nuggets, but I think that's all we need to say about that. Long story short, you have to get through several floors, completing goals that are tied to the character choice you've made. This all sounds very simple, doesn't it? Well, I guess at its core it is. From a main hub area, which gives you more than enough choice, from switching to co-op with up to 4 players, friends permitting, to tweaking and changing the entire gameplay experience with modifiers galore, and then eventually jumping into a round. That's not to mention the online mode, as well as a multitude of other areas to tweak things like your loadout as well as the look of your character. Once you've made the unenviable choice of class to start with, yes, they are classes of sorts, each with their own unique skills, but more importantly an initial loadout and overarching mission to complete through each run, then you jump into the game. The over mission is basically an underlying, entirely optional objective, such as destroying all the power plants in each floor. Doing so will grant you more XP as well as some potential loot-based reward. To progress in the game, you've got a set number of missions shown with different coloured arrows on the map. These are quite straightforward: destroy this, kill them, or loot an item, but they can range from poisoning to jailbreaking, so they shouldn't get dull too quickly. Your character handles almost like a twin stick with a touch more detailed distance control. This allows you to throw grenades, mines, and even banana skins just where you want. The shooting is pretty easy, with a neat slowdown mechanic when you're changing items on the fly. Where the game aims to distance itself from others that you might compare it to, bar maybe the original Syndicate, are the number of ways you can approach each given task. Say you have to eliminate a target in the casino. Well, you could place a charge on the door, knock on it, and then blow them away. How about grabbing a katana, knocking the window, and then stabbing them through it? Or my particular favourite, crumble some cyanide into the ventilation system and watch the ensuing carnage unfold. What's quite refreshing is that each stage has several factions. Their allegiance or help can be purchased. If you find a door you can't pick, you could hire a thief to help. Perhaps you're taking a lot of heat, spend some precious nuggets on a bodyguard, or blow the whole lot on a clone of yourself. When you've met the objectives in the area, you can then leave via the elevator. Your level shown here will get a sizable boost if you've met your core objective. Then it's a case of choosing a random perk and off you go to the next floor. Sometimes you may enter one that's in the middle of a scenario of sorts, such as a police lockdown, which will see them indiscriminately attacking any who cross their paths, or the absolute carnage of a whole floor war zone, with every faction out for each other's blood. I love it when games do that, and I've said that before. You'll find a load of weapons and items, with the melee variety being particularly useful, and these gradually degrade over time. I wish the floors were a little more detailed. Don't get me wrong, they cram a lot of intricacies in there, it just doesn't come together quite as well as it could have. When you begin a level, you know you'll see one of these, and a jail, and a room with cameras and a turret. It feels prefabricated, which obviously in a way it is, but you lose what makes a game like Deus Ex so great. That handcrafted element, and it isn't necessarily just because it's a roguelite title. I think it's more the way the randomly generated maps are made. But in such a small area, it means you're not going to see a huge amount of visual variety. The core fun comes from the sheer amount of different combinations available in the sandbox you're given. I mentioned the ridiculous number of classes and the fact that each have a core mission to work towards. To give you some idea of how varied they can be, the Doctor will have a mission based entirely around the preserving of human life, i.e. don't kill anyone. You have a tranquilizer dart and a med kit and off you go. Meeting the objectives with this character felt totally different to that of the soldier. It was playing as the doc that I started to really feel like the game was clicking, like it was showing me a glimpse of the possibilities. Then I roped my begrudging wife in for a touch of co-op, and the click was real. Playing as a soldier class and bringing her along as the thief, you begin to see the synergies that can be created. I would go in guns a-blazing only to reach a door I couldn't open, at which time she could stroll up and pick the locks to access the safe. It was very cool. I can't say how the online play quite functions, as it wasn't live at the time of writing, but if you can join others online, as I assume you would be able to, this really is where I'd spend my time, or local if you have that luxury. There are stats galore, shops, places to store your gear for another run, power boxes, ghosts, freeze rays, and a ton of perks to make each one feel unique, and it is a fun game once you've given it the time it needs, but for me it never quite reaches greatness. Where were the boss fights at the end of each floor, or open areas to break up the monotony of the gloomy environments? It feels very much like they have a good solid base from which to build, and I enjoy what's here but can feel what could be, or maybe what will be. It's refreshing not to be attacked by every single person on the screen, and hiring help or mixing up your playstyle on the fly adds a lot to the gameplay. The longevity is going to come from trying out the different classes and finding that one that really clicks, but there's far more depth in that regard than your usual top-down floor clearing game. Gameplay for me scores 15 out of 20. It's not perfect, but it is fun, and the controls score 16 out of 20. The musical score is somewhat limited. While it's nice enough to begin with and does the job, it wasn't long before I was turning this down after the loop point became all too clear on the first stage. This is a shame, as overall it's decent enough. But having to do that within the first hour is a worrying thing. From a visual standpoint, the isometric pixel graphics are quite charming. They certainly have a touch of Gungeon about them, from the way they handle explosions and lighting to some of the colour palette choices, but for my money, the overall lack of variety and aesthetic from stage to stage here is weaker than that game. Character models are fully customizable and have a touch of pixelated South Park about them. I'm not entirely enamoured with the overall look of the game, but it scores points for complexity. Every item dropped stays where it lay. Bodies will be cleaned up by a droid robot, power can be cut, plunging the world into darkness, and the game has a real thing for letting you smash people through walls. Gunfire and explosions are strong, and the slow-mo effect pretty neat. Just let the player go outside of these environments in a patch, please. A nice open park level with buildings or something, and let's have a few new audio tracks in there. The game runs well for the most part in docked and handheld and is very smooth, although when you see a rather large explosion, there are some momentary slowdowns, almost like the CPU is loading what happens next. Visuals for me score 13 out of 20, and the audio also scores 13 out of 20. One thing you can't knock Streets of Rogue for is a lack of content. Initially, the game feels quite overwhelming in this regard, especially when you consider that each character has those unique core missions to aim for. This is all well and good, but the competition in this price range is vast. Yes, it offers massive amounts of content for the price, but then so does Gungeon, The Messenger, or even Isaac if you can find that on sale. Streets of Rogue does things none of those games have done though, and manages for the most part to put it off well. Add in the online functionality and the 4-player co-op, and there is more than enough to do here. I just think perhaps for some people it's going to be a wait for a sale. Value scores 16 out of 20. I don't love Streets of Rogue yet, but I have a sneaking suspicion that with a couple of dozen more hours under my belt and some potential co-op with Glenn, I may just do that. I hated Binding of Isaac the first time I played it. I kind of disliked this. Then I wanted to play it again, and I liked it a bit more. Went away, wanted to play it again, and yeah, you can see where this is going. It's gone on like that for a week or so now, and certainly this is not a game to be judged too soon. It takes time. I give it though an overall switch up score of 73%. It feels like the start of something that could be great. Thanks so much to all of our patrons, to all of you who support us on the channel. Please leave a comment down below, let me know what you thought of this game. And as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!